Part 95. You are my lover in this life, so you belong to Bai Xuelan. This commotion made Xuan Huaifeng's back aches for a few days. And the unspeakable part below made him feel uneasy when he moved. Xuan Huaifeng was so angry that he wanted to drive this uncontrollable guy to sleep elsewhere. Bai Xuelan was half guilty, half proud, and he still slept in the same bed with Xuan Huaifeng. Probably to please Xuan Huaifeng, Xiao Feiyan was released and sent to Xuan Huaifeng as a servant girl. Seeing her, Xuan Huaifeng was a little surprised, and asked her, "Is Chief Bai embarrassing you?" Xiao Feiyan looks different now than when she first came. She has changed into the blue cloth clothes that the girl was wearing, with 2 pieces tied on her head. A simple braid looks a lot simpler, but it is also cute and charming. Seeing Xuan Huaifeng asking her, she timidly shook her head. Xuan Huaifeng asked again, and she said, "I fell asleep in the car, and when I woke up, I was in a dark room. The soldiers didn't allow me to go out, they only gave me something to eat, and said I was from Guangdong people from the army. I cried in the dark room for a few days. Later, a man came and said, 'Let me out and give your orders.' Adjutant Xuan, thank you, you saved me again." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Don't tell me if you can't save it. It's not easy to survive in a troubled world. So just stay here now. I don't need someone to call. You have nothing to do, but you can read a book. By the way, are you literate?" Xiao Feiyan said, "I know a few, but I don't know much." Xuan Huaifeng said, "It's better to know a few than not at all. I asked people to buy a copy of 3-character classic, and another copy of past glory poem. You try to read first." He took out his own pockets and called a servant to the bookstore to help him buy these 2 books. Xiao Feiyan didn't know if she was locked up in a dark room for a few days. She was frightened and listened to Xuan Huaifeng's words. She often held 2 books and read in the yard where Huaifeng currently lived. This girl is also diligent in her hands and feet, and often rushes to do things. She is reading books in the corridor. As soon as Xuan Huaifeng asks for some hot tea and hot water, she immediately puts down the book and rushes in to serve. Every day at the hour, without waiting for Xuan Huaifeng to speak, she came in and asked for food, then went to the kitchen to give orders, and brought the food back in person. At the beginning of August, Xuan Huaifeng's bruises and sprains on his bare feet were all healed by 100%. Song Ren also came back from the hospital. This Shandong man is as strong as a cow. He has been taken care of by foreign medical care these days, and he has almost recovered. He was injured to protect Xuan Huaifeng from the attack outside the city. This time, like a heroic triumph, he was first warmly welcomed by his brothers. When Bai Xuelan returned from the General Administration of Customs, he was called to the study again, greatly relieved and rewarded. Money is naturally indispensable, and what is even more rare is what Bai Xuelan said. Bai Xuelan said to him, "When you saved Adjutant Xuan, you saved my life. I, Bai Xuelan, owe you Song Ren's life." This sentence, to the extreme, was more than 100,000 yuan reward. Top use. Song Ren's stomach was boiling. He secretly made up his mind that next time he would still go out and save Adjutant Xuan. Xuan Huaifeng was also pleasantly surprised when he saw Song Ren coming back. For Song Ren's desperate protection in the woods, Xuan Huaifeng has not forgotten for a moment, and has called the hospital several times to ask about his injury. If it wasn't for Xuan Huaifeng's sprained foot, Bai Xuelan would not allow him to go out. Xuan Huaifeng would have gone to the hospital to inquire in person. The shootout outside the city has long been in the newspapers. As Bai Xuelan said, the police department didn't go into the details, and the news released to the public really said that the dead were all mountain bandits. Now the law and order is in chaos. And the city is a little better, but outside the city, everyone is in danger. Bandits murdered and sold goods, and people and gods were angry. The heroic act of the chief of customs who shot a dozen bandits naturally won many media compliments. But it is the Business Economic News and Chamber of Commerce Daily, which are unique, with other meanings between the lines. There is another discussion today. Regarding the issue of social security, it happened to mention the gun battle outside the city. The author said that although this kind of behavior seems to be commendable for a while, it is actually not desirable. Killing bandits is the management of the police department. How can the customs? What do you mean by shooting? When Xuan Huaifeng saw it, he kept the newspaper and waited for Bai Xuelan to come back at night, took it to Bai Xuelan and said, "I look at the Chamber of Commerce and it seems that they are really dissatisfied with you. They are attacking you." Bai Xuelan agreed, put the towel that had wiped his hands on the wooden shelf, and smiled disdainfully. The girl's trick, thinking that the public is her family's men, blowing the pillow wind will not know the south, east, north and west. Chamber of Commerce seeing that the election is approaching, let's play the wind card first. They are eagerly waiting for the new head of customs to come to power. Xuan Huaifeng was surprised and said, "Isn't the government's election all just a pretense? It's all the same. It's just a superficial article. What? Someone really dares to come forward and compete with you?" Bai Xuelan said easily, "Why not? I already got the wind. He is still an old acquaintance of you and me. Take a guess." Xuan Huaifeng thought for a while, his expression suddenly changed. Biting his lip, he didn't speak. Bai Xuelan asked, "Guess who?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I can't guess." Bai Xuelan said, "You guessed right, it's your old lover." Xuan Huaifeng said sternly, "Bai Xuelan, don't be so rude. What kind of new lover?" "Old lover?" Bai Xuelan smiled and said softly, "I said something wrong, don't be angry. In your life, you are the only lover, all yours, and also in this life. Only I have touched it." Xuan Huaifeng's heart softened. "I suddenly remembered that lingering night in the cellar of Nian's house, and it was another dull pain. How obsessed, how stupid. Thinking of Lin Qijun, drunk, and dedicated himself in the darkness. He also thinks he is steadfast in love. Now, sorry for the past." Xuan Huaifeng did not want to bring up this past. If there is no such night, then Bai Xuelan is right. His people belong to Bai Xuelan in this life. If it hadn't been that night, Xuan Huaifeng couldn't mention it, for fear of hurting Bai Xuelan's heart. He is getting along very well with Bai Xuelan now and doesn't want anything unpleasant to happen. The two put the newspaper aside and did not talk about Lin Qijun again. After taking a shower after dinner, when he got to the bed, it was inevitable that there would be a few more rains. Because that night at the Nian's house, Xuan Huaifeng consciously couldn't handle Bai Xuelan, and this night, regardless of what Bai Xuelan asked for, he gritted his teeth and responded obediently with his sore waist and legs, which made Bai Xuelan unbridled, secretly a little embarrassed. The new smoking ban regulations, and the new anti-drug regulations, were officially announced, and the matter on the other side of the drug rehabilitation center was also on the track with vigor. The original house was allocated by the State Council. Since Bai Xuelan came forward, he had to dig up a sum of money from the top. In addition, he slaughtered the three bosses by playing mahjong, and made 300,000 yuan. In the early preparations of the hospital, it is enough. Dr. Brown was very enthusiastic and expressed his willingness to work in the drug rehabilitation center. Of course, the salary still has to be calculated. He told Xuan Huaifeng that he not only came by himself, but also called the mansion to recommend a good Chinese doctor to Xuan Huaifeng. The drug rehabilitation center is lacking a doctor, and Dr. Brown was recommended as a guarantor. Xuan Huaifeng was very happy and said on the phone, I warmly welcome you. And I look forward to your colleagues at any time to contribute to the drug rehabilitation center. As for the salary, I will try my best. I don't know what the doctor's name is, Dr. Brown said. His name is Fei Feng. If you don't mind, I'll tell him to go to the drug rehabilitation center tomorrow, and you can meet. Xuan Huaifeng said, Of course, I don't mind. You are most welcome. Early the next morning, Xuan Huaifeng dressed neatly and drove to the drug rehabilitation center. After Song Ren was discharged from the hospital, his position remained the same. It was still Xuan Huaifeng's personal ointment, and the sticker was tighter than before. Every time he went out, he brought a gun with him. Not to mention reminding Xuan Huaifeng to bring 2 Brownings for self-defense. It's no wonder that no one else saw Xuan Huaifeng's pistol in the woods outside the city. But Song Ren could see it clearly. Fast as lightning, no bullets miss out. Song Ren praised in front of the brothers more than once, Adjutant Xuan's gun is more attractive than Wang Mazi's. Even if Commander Pai has seen it, there is no need to be picky. Hands up and down. Seeing Xuan Huaifeng, Chengping joked with him and said, Huaifeng, Wanxian said. You paid for his medical bills, but you can't repay him. He asked me to bring his sister here and work as a helper for you. Mouth to the other end of the window. Outside the window, a girl with thick braids was drying the freshly washed white sheets on the rope. When she looked up, she saw Chengping's stubborn mouth. Looking very refreshing and generous. Chengping said, I'm looking for you. Xuan Huaifeng, whom you admire, is here. Isn't he always clamoring to see him? The girl came into the room and saw a young man standing beside Chengping. The man had a faint smile on his face, his eyes were bright. And his black eyes were like jade. He was really handsome and extraordinary. She couldn't help but stare at him, who was still in love. She didn't speak for a long time. Chengping laughed at her and said, Such a beautiful man, are you dumbfounded? Your brother said that he has a friend who is beautiful like Panin. You don't believe it. So you just talk to your brother. What should I do now? Xuan Huaifeng was told by Chengping. Feeling embarrassed, he frowned and said, Chengping, don't make trouble. This is your friend's sister. It's fine if you don't let her, why are you still bullying others? After they said these 2 sentences, the little girl had come back to her senses. And returned to her original generosity and liveliness, and interjected, I don't need him to protect me. He always bullies me when my brother is not around. And when my brother is discharged from the hospital, I will sue him. She walked over, bowed to Xuan Huaifeng in a proper manner, stood up, and said, Hello, Mr. Xuan. My brother said that you are a very patriotic person. You also opened this drug rehabilitation center. I admire you very much. After speaking, she bowed again. Xuan Huaifeng was embarrassed. And quickly said, This is a drug rehabilitation center opened by the government. I don't dare to take credit for this. It's you who came to help voluntarily. I want to thank you. Chengping smiled. Okay, this is Brother Du Bao saw the scene of Sister Lin. The left one bowed and the other bowed right, don't be shabby. Huaifeng, we have been friends with Wanxian for a few years. He hid his sister tightly, and now it is finally open. Her name is Huang Yushan. In the future, you can call her Xiao Shan. I will call her like this. Huang Yushan faced Chengping, obviously familiar with him, and said back to him, When did my brother hide me? No, do you want to study? But my brother has already said that when the holidays are over, I can come here and contribute to the society. After speaking, she turned her head and said to Xuan Huaifeng, Mr. Xuan, prepare a student parade, anti-foreigners and anti-drugs. If you are free, can you please guide me? Xuan Huaifeng could not imagine that these young girls are now enthusiastic about politics, and smiled wryly. I am busy, you must be busy. Look at this drug rehabilitation center, there are many things. Besides, drugs are drugs, and foreigners are foreigners, so we cannot generalize. Foreigners are not necessarily all bad people. A good man, Huang Yushan said, don't be angry. I'm more than your words. Everything depends on the big picture. Even drugs, such as morphine, if used as a painkiller, are also a good medicine. But can they cover up the fact that it poisons the Chinese people? Don't say morphine, even opium is a good medicine. However, if the customs seizes a batch of opium, will it not be destroyed because of its permissible uses? In times of national disaster, we must make a decision. The foreign powers are waiting to share our China. And if we are indecisive and pay attention to these details, it will be tantamount to self-destruction. Xuan Huaifeng was surprised when she said this. Chengping hugged his hands and laughed. Huang Wanxian is really good, being a socialist and a reporter, and teaching a female politician. Huang Yushan spoke righteously. Outside, a man who looked like a helper came in and said to Xuan Huaifeng, Adjutant Xuan, a gentleman surnamed Fei is looking for you. Xuan Huaifeng said, Oh, that's a doctor recommended by Dr. Brown. Please come in quickly. Chengping was still in the room before he left, and when he saw the doctor come in, he first said, Huh. It turned out that Chengping and Xuan Huaifeng had both met. It was the day Huang Wanxian was hospitalized when his foot was broken, the man in the German hospital wearing a white lab coat with a pen in his pocket. Chengping still had a deep memory of this old man's tone of, you. Chinese at every turn. When he saw it, he first wrinkled his nose and asked, Isn't this guy who admires foreigners the most? Why don't you want to stay in the German hospital? Come to the drug rehabilitation center to play? Dr. Fei frowned when he saw Chengping, glanced at him, and asked, Are you in charge here? Chengping said, No. Xuan Huaifeng said, Are you Dr. Fei said that you are here to apply for a job? These are my qualifications. Please take a look at the manager. If you want me, I'll stay, don't pull me down. I'm still going back to the German hospital. He came over. Xuan Huaifeng took it over and took a few glances. He studied mathematics and didn't know anything about medicine. Looking at this resume, it said that he had a doctorate degree from a certain university in Germany, and a few lines of job qualifications, but he didn't know several professional names. However, since it was specially introduced by Dr. Brown, the medical skills should not be too bad. After asking about the salary again, Fei Feng's conditions were not too high. So Xuan Huaifeng agreed and asked him to go back to work in a week. As soon as Fei Feng left, Chengping stomped his feet and said, When you ask a doctor, you only look at medical skills, not medical ethics. He smells like a foreigner's legs from head to toe. Xuan Huaifeng said, Here I am. There is a shortage of doctors, so there is still room to choose. If you can help me find some good doctors, I can fire him. In a word, Chengping was speechless. Xuan Huaifeng now has a very heavy task. In addition to the drug rehabilitation center, he also has the responsibilities of an adjutant. As soon as the work in the drug rehabilitation center was over, he took Song Ren back to the White Mansion, trying to sort out the documents sent by the General Administration of Customs today. But as soon as he entered the house, the servant came over and handed him a note, saying, Adjutant Xuan, a young lady called you today. I said you went out, but she said, Please come back to you when you have time. Xuan Huaifeng looked at the phone number on the note. It was clearly the one that Lahua wrote to herself. He couldn't help but snort. Secretly, damn, why do you always forget her? Now his relationship with Bai Xuelan has gone further. And he is no longer as cautious as in the past, worried about Bai Xuelan's suspicions, and thinking about contacting Lahua. He is open and honest, and there is nothing to be embarrassed about. When Bai Xuelan comes back, he might as well explain it to him. Then, without being shy, he went to the telephone room to call Lahua and made an agreement to meet. Then he asked someone to call Xuan Huaifeng and said to her, "Do you remember a person named Lahua?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Why don't I remember? I was almost sold by the head's wife into Shuyan Pavilion. Bumped into her, and cried to her." Xuan Huaifeng said, "You are here now." But it is actually her credit. He told her how Lahua reminded him and how she repeatedly asked Xuan Huaifeng about her situation. He asked her again, she said she wanted to see you. "Let's see if you're doing well now. Would you like to?" Xuan Huaifeng was already moved. She nodded, and said to Xuan Huaifeng, "Adjutant Xuan, you must let me meet her. In this world, there is a person who treats me like this for no reason. This is the fate that God will reward us." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Okay, then go change your clothes and dress up beautifully. She is happy to see you." Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly went, and when she came back, she was wearing the good clothes she had on when she came, and she looked very bright. Xuan Huaifeng took her out.